What's up, everybody? It's Matt here. Welcome to another episode of Composer Code. Today it's episode 15, and my guest is Chase Bethea. He is a game composer, and he was an absolute joy to speak with. I mean, he's a great guy. We talked a lot about different composition methods that he's employed in his recent projects, specifically through composing versus looping. Had an interesting conversation about that. He shared some awesome, insightful tips for getting out of writer's block or pushing through writer's block. They're practical. Guys, you're really going to love this conversation. So without further ado, my interview with Chase Bethea. I'd love to hear the origin story, your origin story, how you got involved in music, and more specifically, what led you down this path to want to make video game music a career.
Let's see. I tell the story differently every time, so I'm going to wing it.
No problem, man.
So let's see if I could just start off. Well, I started off doing hip hop and R&B. I was making like beats and stuff like that on FL Studio, FL 3.1 or whatever, back in 2001, 2002. And for 7 years, I was told, even from the first beat that I ever made, that it's like, it sounded like it should be in a video game. I was always told that no matter what beat I ever did, going through high school, going through a little bit of college. That was always what I was told, and I couldn't escape that sound, and it really frustrated me until I went to a internet media company that had needed music, and when I was doing that, one of the IT guys had said, "It's like, oh, this sounds like it should be in Castle Crashers." So again, like I hit that sound on the mark,
yeah,
and then from there I was like, what the hell? So is this a sign of some sort? So
right.
I looked into it and started researching around 2009, I want to say 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had discovered that it was a career and that I love music and I love games, and I had always been playing games, which is probably the reason why it was sounding that way.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I went down the path to become a composer. I thought I was going to be a film composer as well, do that stuff. But games just kind of led me into that, to the point where I bought like a couple books, and I went online, submitted my work to a couple demos for people who were looking for music back in 2011, I want to say. 2000, actually it was 2009, 2010. And I got a job at a mobile media company where I was kind of doing some music for them, and then officially freelance right after the company went defunct again, and freelance again, I should say, and pitched for things online and landed my first freelance gig with the first demo I sent.
Now, did you go through any sort of formal training when you were young, or did you just naturally have a proclivity for music that sort of kind of you're self-taught and it kind of evolved into this path, or did you go to school for this?
I played alto saxophone from 5th to 7th grade. I was in advanced band, and my dad had bought me that saxophone, and then I didn't play for about several years. And then I went to, when the internet media company went under, I went to community college for my second degree. And that was in 2009. And then I started classical piano from there. I actually started a year before, but I wasn't consistent. I was just kind of playing by ear still and doing all these other things. I already had a keyboard years before, but I didn't know about lessons and things like that. I didn't know that was accessible, so I never thought about it until I went to school and they had classes. And so I studied classical piano for about 5-6 years. And then in the later years of university, I did a little bit of jazz piano.
Okay. How do you think that affected your style? Because obviously hip hop, R&B, classical piano, worlds apart. Did you sort of fuse the two? Because as I was listening, it's funny that you mentioned, I kind of smiled when you said hip hop and R&B, because I checked out a lot of your music before the show, and I noticed a very distinct emphasis on rhythm and on beats. And so I almost got kind of a hip hop vibe there, where the beats were very carefully crafted, and constructed. Did you sort of fuse those two? Do you feel like you fused those two styles in your work, or where is your classical piano kind of led your styles?
I did fuse them. That's actually, I think what makes my sound is I'm able to fuse a lot of styles together and do it okay. I'm trying to get better at it. But
aren't we all?
I absorb a lot of things that I like, and a lot of that stuff that you've heard is probably the adolescence and the early childhood, as opposed to now where it's I can tell that it's changing because I'm not introducing myself to so much music. I'm actually bringing it from here and with it, like myself and my heart. And I've cut down on a lot of music that I've been listening to. Also, a lot of music nowadays doesn't really get me. Like it doesn't sound that interesting. And so it's easy for me to kind of cut out and mitigate the lesser things that I could spend my time listening to greater stuff. In terms of where the classical parts fit in, it's usually just the theory in terms of form and contrapuntal counter melodies, also orchestration balance in terms of understanding how and when the melody needs to come out, and building the leitmotif and understanding it, and adding certain things from my piano repertoire or from my practice in terms of like mordents or trills, and a bunch of all that stuff comes into play when I'm writing now. Well, since I've actually went to school for it, like when I started in 2009, all that stuff started to seep in. So now it's probably rising a little bit more to the surface, and as opposed to, and now I think it's a little more, it's conflated a little bit in terms of depending on the project that I'm on.
Right. You mentioned that a lot of your beats that you were making in high school were influenced by games, and that you yourself were playing a lot of games. What are some games or game soundtracks that you remember as a kid that really left like a huge impact on you? Like for me, it was Sonic. Like the Sonic series was like the first real music I ever heard, because my parents bought me a Genesis when I was like 5 or 6. And so that style really left an impact on me. Was there a game like that sort of did that for you?
Yeah, I would say rhythmically, believe it or not, even though I want to just be clear, the hip hop and the R&B, the rhythms that I guess I didn't study them, but I gravitated to them a lot. The top 2 producers were Timbaland and Pharrell. Hands down, back in the day, those were the guys. Those were like the best beats you could probably have. They always had everybody dancing. There were headbangers, whatever. But in terms of like game music, the things that had influenced me the most is Alberto Gonzalez, who scored the video game Turok Battle of the Dinosaurs on Gameboy. And if you listen to that a lot of that music I'm influenced by, because also on the Game Boy for the 1989 or the color or whatnot, you could do sound tests. And so when I figured that out for some of the games, I just had it on loop, and it would just put it somewhere in my dresser and just play it and do whatever I was doing, and wherever I would just sit down, listen, or I don't know. I wasn't doing much, but I was listening to that on repeat a lot. The other games, I would say Batman Forever on Game Boy. I also had a Sega Genesis, so I'd say Sonic a little bit had an influence on me, but I didn't gravitate to that sound, I guess, as much as maybe I gravitated to like Streets of Rage, Yuzo Koshiro, or the other one is I'm thinking about is solely escaping me, but Comic Zone was another one.
Oh yeah.
Their
for Genesis,
Mega Turrican had a really big impact on me. It just depends on how it. Like I played so many games in my life, and I own so many still that I realize that some of them are still coming at me. Like Stargate on Game Boy, that soundtrack is amazing too.
Game Boy was clearly
was my first
the Game Boy style,
right? And then I had Sega a little later. Like my dad had bought me the Sega for Christmas one time and brought home like 23 something games because Hollywood Video was going out of business, and I was psyched. And so I had those influences Oh, Pebble Beach on Sega is a really big influence on me as well.
Yes, Pebble Beach
golf links,
dude. That soundtrack slaps. I need to put that in the description. This is for some reason okay. Sports games, like old sports games, golf games, soccer, tennis, all that stuff on these old systems. They have some of the best music. It's unreal.
NBA Jam.
It's crazy. So NBA Jam. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm putting that in the description. And I think you win the award for the most niche influence, because everyone that I've talked to has been like Koji Kondo, Mario, Pokemon. And it's like, okay, but you're just like Turok for Game Boy. That's just so cool.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know about they don't know about some of those soundtracks, and they're big, like hidden gems in terms of like, as well as it is a good game. That's what I don't know. I mean, I could go on about the list, but I don't even have all day and time. We could totally geek out about it over.
Yeah.
Whenever.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, coming back to your process, I'm curious now that you are, that you've gone through your training in piano, is that typically where you begin when you start composing a new piece? Do you kind of start on a MIDI keyboard or an electronic keyboard? Walk me through your process.
That little thing in the corner right there, I've had for about 13 years, but I haven't always been writing on it. There was a time where I did have a piano at the house I was living in, and I learned during my classical training to bond with the instrument. Now you're saying, I know what you're thinking is like, I also own an alto saxophone again, but I don't play that as much because it gets kind of loud and whatnot, and I can at least control the volume on the piano. But I learned to build a relationship and this bond with this instrument, and to the point where, I mean, if you were practicing an hour a day for 5 hours a day, you're going to get somewhat better at your instrument, right? And so I was doing that for about 7 years. So I also had this anime relationship in terms of with this anime called Bleach.
I'm aware of Bleach.
Okay.
I had a buddy in high school who liked it. I've seen a few episodes. It's good.
Not to spoil anything for anyone, but there's a part in the series later on in the series where Ichigo has to build a bond with his weapon, and the weapon talks to him. It has its own soul. And when it talks to him, it's saying that, hey, we're supposed to be one together. So when I don't remember the specific words, but when he said that, I was kind of still starting my early classical piano training. And I took that idea and put it with what I was doing, because not all the repertoire sometimes that we receive is always the greatest. And when you start out, it's really hard to practice and get through that big hump. And so I was relating with that with the anime, where he was just like, not getting it, it's not working, I'm trying as hard as I can. And I applied that to the instrument. Now, like whenever I step at just even that little MIDI keyboard, or when I do buy my upright piano for the house that I'm in, then I always have that connection, no matter what I sit at, no matter where I'm at. And I also remember my piano teacher told me, she said, we have a gift and a curse at the same time if we're playing piano, because we don't have to carry our instrument because we can't be heavy. But at the curse of that is we don't know how it's going to sound when we play it. So our job is through our fingers to be able to be prepared to play on any piano that we touch.
That's a really good point. How does that's very interesting, by the way. I've never heard anybody kind of talk about that bond between music making device and music maker. How do you think that affects your composition and your work as like a working composer when you sit down and you have that bond with your instrument?
I think it's coming more from my heart. And music is supposed to make us feel something, right? Like I heard someone say recently, as humans, we can't live without air, can't live without water, we can't live without music. And I feel that music should at least move us in some kind of way, whereas it doesn't have to always be positive. It could make us feel angry. It could make us feel sad. It could make us feel joyful. And my goal is to express whatever is coming through my body into the instrument and out into someone's ears, into someone's psychological being that they are moved by it in some form or fashion, mostly positive, I hope, in terms of like where they like it, or they're addicted to it as I was addicted to it. Like, whereas I wanted to listen to the sound test over and over and over and repeat that song over. And I've heard, what is it? I forgot the song from Shadow of the Colossus, but I played it like over 900 and something times on my iTunes list back in like 2009 or sometime, where I'm hoping to get to reach people that way, obviously. Whereas it feels like, if it doesn't catch you the first time, I planted the seed and you remember it for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is I want to talk in a second about your most recent project, Ground. Because that's the one that I really liked. And then I really heard a lot of your influences that I was talking about with the sort of the rhythms mixed with the chiptune. But before we get there, I want to ask, how do you think, I want to kind of explore this idea of moving people emotionally. Like, obviously music is such a subjective thing, and who knows why we like the things we like. But in your experience, when you are composing for a game and you're trying to use this medium to maybe move people, what are some aspects of music that do that for you? Is it the melody? Is it the rhythm? Is it the chord progression? Is it the way they all congeal? Or is there something specifically to you that moves you? Like, I can think of a few chord progressions, for me personally, that when I hear them, it always gets me. You know what I mean? Is there something like that for you? Or kind of explore that idea that you were just talking about?
It depends on, we all go through a lot of moods throughout the day. And like right now it's raining. It's actually been raining in Los Angeles. God, thank you, God, for a couple of days now. And
that's crazy.
For the mood, it depends how it gets me that day. Mostly chord progressions are the ones that hit me the most, because my ear kind of gravitates towards that. But I've realized as I'm getting older, I've always heard melodies first. And so now it's like a layer flip. So now it's more melodies and then harmony, and rhythm is something that is just within me all the time. So it just, not everything that I listen to that I've heard has rhythm, but it's mostly the timbre of the sounds and the orchestration, I would say, that I realized is the really core of what I'm realizing it is. It's not just like one thing. It's the entire painting. It's the color palette. And I realize that now it's the color palette and the timbres that make it soar and sings properly in all its form, in its complete art form. It is that.
And when you say that, when you say orchestration, you don't just mean from an actual orchestra. You mean like anything, like whether it's chiptune or rhythms. It's just the way all the elements congeal.
Absolutely.
That kind of give you that feeling. Yeah, I totally agree, man. Because sometimes you take the disparate elements away and you listen to them on their own, and it's nothing special, but something magical happens when you combine them all. So I want to talk a little bit about your Aground soundtrack, which I really like. It's got a lot of chiptune influences, but also just a lot of hybrid styles. What was your approach? If you could walk me through, because a lot of people listening to the podcast are also interested in getting into the business of composition. So I would love if you could walk me through the whole story of like how you found that gig, how you landed that gig, and then what your process was like for composing for that game.
Sure. So I have been working with a developer, Fancy Fish Games, for I would say 7 years now. And so we've shipped about 5 or 6 games together. And so this is their next project, and they brought me on.
If I may ask, sorry to interrupt. How did you initially find them? Because I find that's also a struggle for, starting off composers, is like, how do I get in that circle of trust?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. What I tell people all the time is game jams. That's all I say, because it's the truth.
Yeah.
So I was doing one game a month, which unfortunately I think shut down last year. And the developer was on that site, and somehow I found it on just researching a bunch about like game projects. And if you're on the internet enough, if you let your mind wander with the internet, then you'll get to when you're focused on something and you just use that focus in towards it, you'll find what you're looking for. So I found one game a month game jam. The developer was on there. He had posted that he was doing a certain type of horror game, and I had just finished shipping my first project for the mobile phone. So I was looking for something else right after the bat. I thought that I was going to work with that developer more. And then he was like, it was just a hobby thing. I'm not doing it anymore. I was like, oh, okay, so I got to look for something else. And when I found out about game jams, I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. And so I found that developer. I saw that he was pushing for that. He said that he had a couple other people that were also wanting to be on the team to do music and sound. And I didn't wait. I just started making assets. Understood the concept of what he wanted when I had read it. And I said, well, I can just use this for something else if he doesn't like it, but I really want to be a part of this project for this game jam. So I've just started making assets.
That is fantastic.
And I made
I'm going to say one quick lesson, because there's a huge lesson to be learned here. Number one, I completely echo what Chase is saying. For everyone listening, game jams are huge. I did my first game jam this past year, and it was an incredible time. I made a lot of really great friends, and it was just such an awesome experience to learn how to work with a team. But also, I think it's super practical and proactive that you saw the brief and you started making assets. That is huge, because that's going to set you apart, from other composers or other people, like to show how proactive you are in doing that. And that may even free you up to do other games. Cause I know composers that would compose for like 3 different games at game jams, so for those of you listening, game jams are amazing. Find one in your city if you can and do it and make assets beforehand. Anyway, I just felt like there was a teachable moment there. So continue.
No, that's cool. So yes, absolutely. Game jams are the way to go. This is how you get started for most people. And you never know. Sometimes those games go on to be commercial successes, as we've seen. I'm sure, Matt, you've seen as well. And
Binding of Isaac.
Exactly.
Started out
just to name one.
Right. So exactly.
With me being proactive, he was impressed by the quality of work that I was putting out and how fast I got him 2 tracks and a couple sound effects within like a day. And he was awesome that I did that. And so he just decided, let's jam together and we'll do this. Not knowing anything about his character until later on when we spoke and become friends, that he was looking for people that you could rely on and depend on, and 2, that, produce good quality for things that you wanted for it. Because, for games, you need at least good polish. So with that, we went on to ship a lot more games. So with Aground, I played the game first. We had a prototype about 2 years ago, and I just felt this magic in it when I was playing it, and it was so smooth. Like the art, we have a great artist named Aaron who's on the team, and he was putting in all the art together, and then David from Fancy Fish was putting in the code, and his wife Natalie was putting in some of the writing along with David, and they're working together. And when I was playing it, I was like, wow, this is really fluid. This feels like it's done. And so when that moment happens for me, when I feel like it's done or like it's farther along than I had ever conceived it in my mind to be, the music just starts rolling in my head, and the sound and the whatever like that. And I'm able to just be creative and get to work as fast as the day when I was being proactive for anything. And
that's awesome.
With that, it took me a long time to come up with the theme. It took me, I think, over a month. And the reason it took me over a month is because I had so much of that anxious feeling of that finish when I played the game. I couldn't put it out right away. I had to lay it out. I had to really extend it and piece it together. I was really like painting like Bob Ross style, but not as fast as Bob Ross. Right. And so that is the process of normally that I went into with this whole project. Is I do sit at the keyboard. I come up with melodies for themes for different areas of the game. I believe everything should have its own identity. I should believe it have its own symbolism and moments. And because I always put myself in the player's shoes first. I am not the composer first. I am hence why played the game first before I wrote anything. Now, some people will do the opposite, and most of us won't have the game design document or maybe even some art to. We won't have a build, but you'll have the other stuff. But with me, I was fortunate to have that, and I'm always thinking about what the player or the gamer will enjoy. And
yeah, that's so smart, man.
It's important because the first thing I think about when I'm writing after that is how monotonous is this going to be? So we're going into Ground. I decided to have a through composed approach, which was shunned upon by one of my friends. I love my friend. He's great. But he said,
can you explain a little bit about what that term means that you just said?
Shunned upon?
No, no, don't expand on that. That's sad. Expand on through composed.
Yeah, through compose is a writing form in terms of which there's like an A-B form and an ABA form, and there's sonata form, sonata allegro form. These are all classical styles of a way to write in terms of where your themes will come in and out of. And through compose means that it just goes linearly all the way through. It's not a loop. Right. It may not touch back. It may not touch back to the A section or the B section. But if it does, it's going A, B, C, D, E, F, so on and so forth, all the way down. As opposed to like an A, B form. I'm forgetting like there's ternary, so it's A, B, A form or other things of that nature. So yeah, through compose, I realized keeps it less monotonous. Is a writing technique that I had discovered on my own without doing any research. I know it already exists and other composers have done it, but I had thought about it in terms of a way to kind of keep things progressing, since the game is a lot about progression and always keeping things fresh. And that was the main savor and the main technique of writing Aground.
So did you, when you came up with these iterations of the melody and you finally landed on one that you really liked, just kind of curious as far as the technical side of the process, do you then take your, do you write it down or do you notate it in a particular kind of software? And then once you do, maybe talk through some of the tools, the VSTs that you like to kind of make those ideas a reality.
Sure. Sometimes I write pen and paper for one of the pieces that I wrote for Ground. It's called Isle of Lament or Lament of the Isle, one of the two. And I think it's Lament of the Isle. And I wrote a 4-part harmony, which I haven't done since college, which is nice. Community college. And I put it in, I didn't, usually when those happen, they're for choral pieces or quartets, but this one I would try to use the technical form of like just using synths. Was extremely challenging for me because I wanted it to be pretty and beautiful and also not get too away from the mood and the art style of the game. And other times I just write straight into the DAW. So usually if I was at the piano, I would record. What I do is if I'm at a piano, I would record my idea on the piano on my phone. I just have that. Then I reorchestrate it or something into the DAW, which is a digital audio workstation. In my case, I write music in is Cubase when it works. And, and from there, I have a sound palette that I created for the game specifically. And what that means is I have specific instruments that I've used consistently throughout the entire soundtrack, maybe with a few new additions here and there, depending on like the mood that I'm trying to convey. And for the VSTs or the virtual instruments that I'm using is Silent. I have Panzer Tank. I have, which is like an FM synth style. Using Reactor patches for different modes and moods. I'm using some. I like these vintage Yamaha keyboards, and their sound fits extremely well with the projects I've been using.
I love vintage. I love the DX7.
Yes.
I love the sound of the DX7, dude. That thing is timeless.
One of those in there. I have the ANX1 in there. I have, the SY85 a little bit in there as well. And I found these in sound font form, and then I just kind of manipulate them in the DAW. and until I get like the sound that I'm kind of looking for and the approach. So if I'm, like I said, it's the melody first, or if I'm having a cool chord progression moment, then I have that. And then usually I've been staying away from rhythm because I know that it's in a lot of my other compositions. So I'll add a little bit in and out of this, of this specific game soundtrack that I'm scoring currently.
Mm-hmm. So when you, when you're writing, do you ever have moments where you kind of have writer's block, or you feel like you kind of wake up and the stuff that you're putting out is just not good? Do you ever have those days? I mean, I'm sure it's kind of a rhetorical question because I guess everyone who's creative, right? We all have those days. How do you overcome that? How do you push through that, even just mentally, in terms of not getting discouraged, that kind of thing?
Sure. I got an answer for you. It's going to be good. As I do get writer's block sometimes, what I realize my writer's block is now is more of, it's not of how, it's usually how to finish or how to start. It's not normally anything in between, as long as I keep them. What's ironic about that is the starting point is usually the hardest, but it should be the easiest for me because I already have a sound palette together. So I should know what it's going to sound like. I have all these certain presets, these things, these instruments I've carved out the timbres for. And what I realized, I had made a list of how to overcome those when I hit them. And so I'll be happy to share that list with you.
That is fantastic, dude.
So
for those of you who don't see the video, Chase has a journal, like the kind that you wrote in elementary school, composition book with like the black and white checkered. He grabbed it like quick draw. He was ready for this question. So, and you weren't even preempted on this. So I'm impressed, man. I'd love to hear the list. Excellent. Or at least a few.
Yeah, this is my composition book, and I wrote underneath, it speaks for itself, and it has like that.
That's true. It says composition book right on the front.
And then I have my little sticker on the back.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
So I came up with this list about a year ago, and I realized that it's actually really, really, really useful. So the first one on the list I have is take time away. The other one is do something else related. And so I guess what that means is maybe go practice one of your repertoire pieces, or learn a new repertoire piece, or a song that you want to learn. The next thing is copy other work, ? So what I mean by that is try to emulate someone else's style that you like. And see if you can come close to that. Sometimes just in doing those two things I just said, which was like maybe go practice or copying someone else's work, a tiny little idea might come out of that. And you know what the old adage is? Good composers borrow and great composers steal. But you got to be careful. Right. I'm not condoning any thief things going on. Copyrights do exist, but it's okay to be inspired. Just don't straight up lift and put and paste.
Right. Otherwise you're going to end up getting sued, like all the stuff happening with Ed Sheeran and
exactly.
all that stuff. So
right. Let's see. The other thing on the list is refer to fiddle/idea tracks. So I guess that means if you had something that was festering before and you forgot, or if you're having this writer's block, you can go back to an old session that you maybe didn't finish because you didn't think it was good enough that day, or you weren't feeling it. Open it up and see what happens with it. See if there's something in there that is hiding that you can bring into life of what you're trying to finish currently. The other thing is singing. Singing is huge. I found that if you sing, a lot of ideas come out. Actually, that's been the most thing that's got me through Aground through certain writer's block is I'll take the time away, but my time away is I'll have the music play around in the room, and I'll just go like wash dishes or just clean up a little bit. Like maybe I got a vacuum or something, but I'm singing, or when it's quiet or something, when I'm not making the noise, I'll sing. And I'll just like hum or do little weird things and try different intervallic things of that nature, and something will come up.
And the side benefit of that is that, most of the most memorable music just in life is singable.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's like if you dun 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 dun, I just butchered that, but Star Wars theme. It's like we can all sing that, and so there's something lyrical. You know what I mean? There's something awesome about singing music when you know that if it gets stuck in your own head and you can sing it, then you know it's going to get stuck. It's got a higher likelihood of getting stuck in the heads of your listeners, and they'll also be able to sing it in their car or, you know, that sort of thing. So there's that added benefit of really making your melodies lyrical.
Yeah. The other one is release limitations. Play on instruments you're not familiar with. So, for example, I have
this, man.
a kalimba that I don't know how to play too well, and I have a harmonica. But these things, when you're fiddling around with that stuff, it's still music. It's still, you're unlocking something within yourself. You're unlocking something that is supposed to be made that you're going to, you know, make of some sort. The other thing is
fresh, you know, it's because sometimes when we have our piano or our guitar or our main instrument, we go back to the same tropes, you know, the same chords, the same keys, the same melodies. But you pick up an instrument that you don't know, like you pick up a ukulele, and it's like, okay, I need to figure out chords and the way that they're voiced differently. It sparks new ideas. So I absolutely love that, man.
Thank you. I got 3 left. So it's the other one that I do a lot and I found is really helpful is improvising.
Okay.
Improvisation is king to me. When I don't know what I want to do, I just hit record and I just start playing on the keyboard. And 9 times out of 10, I use it.
That's awesome.
Out. It works. That's like when you don't have time for an inspiration to hit you. You don't have time to do this other stuff. You don't have time to read. Improvise. That will save you. The other thing
the deadlines are coming up. There's no time for inspiration when a deadline is looming.
Exactly. The other thing is starting with 2 measures. I know I said release your limitations, but sometimes some people work with limitations. So if you have 2 measures to write, it doesn't seem as daunting as writing 4 to 7 minutes of music. Because
that's true.
Measures, I was told by a writing teacher, or like an actual, not a composition, but like when you're writing a paper for something, they were saying if you can write 2 pages, you can write 5 pages. You can write 5 pages, you write 10. If you write 10, you can write 100. And that was their idea. And I thought it was ridiculous. I was like, there's no way. But he was right. Mm-hmm. He was totally right. If I could write that, I could write more. And as I progressed in college, I was writing bigger papers and it became a lot easier. And so when people are like, you got to write 25 pages, like, oh no, I was like, piece of cake.
That's awesome.
The last thing I want to share is something that I don't think many people have discovered, and I might be the first to kind of share it. And this is use a friend's phone number as a chord progression.
What? Explain that. So,
you know that the basic chord progression has a phone number, right? The 4736251. That's usually the order of how the chords will kind of go, and you can always go back, you know, from 1 to 4 and cycle through, and it'll always be in structured form. Have you ever tried using someone else's phone number? It's the same thing.
Wow. No, I have not. What do you do for the zeros?
So what I wrote in my book was you can let your theory guide you to determine the key and the tempo. So for example, my friend's number is 6940636. So 9 and 2 are interchangeable intervals. So if I can't use a 9 for a chord, you know, of some sort, I can use the 2 chord. If I want to use a 0, I can use a wild card. So maybe I can use a Neapolitan or augmented 6 chord or whatever, German or Italian, or whatever sus chord I can do. It can kind of be like a joker number if I would.
That is so cool, dude. I love stuff like this. This is amazing. I'll tell you what, you need to write a blog post. What you just said just sounds like a blog, but like Chase Bethea's 10 tips for getting out of writer's block. And then you just explain all that.
Done. I'll do it.
If you won't write it, I will, man. Because it needs to be written. Okay, you write it.
I'm glad that you like it, though. I'm glad that
I love it. I love it, man. And I hope everyone listening loves it too, because those are some incredible tips. I'm already thinking of like my wife's phone number. She's got a 252, which would be pretty interesting.
Yeah,
like a minor 2, dominant 2, and then 252 2881. I'll have to think about that. But that is so cool, man. I really like that. So I want to talk a little bit, aside from just being a great composer and doing game jams, what do you think have been some of the principles or the milestones of your success, whether these are soft skills, communication skills, the way that you talk to people, maybe talk a little bit about what you think has led you to your success thus far, aside from, obviously just composing great music.
Staying humble and being a good person. I was lucky and born to have been raised by wonderful women, and also have my father and around during my childhood and growing up. But my mom taught me about being a man of my word, which goes for accountability, and also like I was taught to be proactive, which bled into being proactive with work.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was bullied when I was younger in school. And so I guess I learned that, I was always taught like treat others the way you would like to be treated. Mm-hmm. And I knew that it was important to just be nice. And nobody likes someone who's mean. And they usually don't get very far. They may get somewhat far, but they don't get very, very far. Like there's no longevity. And just, I would say it's like home upbringing and experiences that I've had in my childhood to understand what I could, like what I end up being as a person is what made me somewhat successful thus far.
Well, that's really cool, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's awesome. Last question. When you look forward, down the tunnel of time at your own music career, your own projects, what's something that you're really looking forward to in the future?
Winning that Aground award for best music.
Oh yeah, I saw you guys. Yes, is it too late to vote? Because we can plug that right now.
It's never too late, but the game doesn't come out until later this October, so it'll be a long shot, but that would be nice. I thought I was going to at least get it nominated for some award from a past project that I did called Reality, which is a visual novel, but I digress. So we will put the link award for music of some sort, whatever project that is in the near future. I've been nominated in the industry, which is extremely humbling, especially since I was up against like pretty big names and such.
That's awesome. Well, I will put the link to vote in the description. If you guys want to help out an indie composer, check it out. It looks like an awesome game. Fantastic. Cool, man. Well, dude, it has been an absolute delight speaking with you today. It's been a real pleasure. Where can people find out more about you, listen to your music, maybe hire you?
Yeah, that I am always on Twitter at Chase Bethea, Bethea. If you want to hear more of my music, I have all the links to all the platforms that everybody wants to listen to. Mostly YouTube is first, and Bandcamp and iTunes and Spotify and everything else. And that website is www.chasebethea.com. And that is the hub for everything that you can find me on all of the social media platforms, all the music platforms that I can possibly think of. I'm not hard to find. There's only 2 Chase Betheas in the world. So.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's good to know. Well, awesome, dude. Thank you so much. It's been fantastic speaking with you, and best of luck to you in the future, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Well, guys, I really hope you enjoyed that conversation with Chase. I think there's a ton that we can take away from that. And thanks again, Chase, for being a part of the show. I wanted to mention for anyone in the northern part of the United States, VGM Con is happening very soon, February 22nd to 24th, and I will be there moderating a panel on video game music theory with 8-Bit Music Theory himself. I'm super excited, and I would love to meet anyone listening. If anyone here is in that area, you can check out vgmcon.org for more information. So really hope to see you guys there. Thanks again. We'll see you on the next episode.